So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you guys today for coming to the admin and purchasing. So we do a big full in September, usually in just September, but this year it was August, September, October, we do a full day training. This is the same training. It's just we break it up into sections. We do the administrative part and the procurement in the morning, and then we do meal patterns in the afternoon. It kind of helps out a lot with if say you just have a cook that needs training on meal patterns, they don't have to sit through the whole thing. They can just come in the afternoon. So it's more helpful to do the all day training during renewal. But after renewal, and we did it a lot longer than normal this past year because of the training being required. But now we broke it up into sections. This training is going to be put on OSDE Connect. So if you have anybody that needs to do it self-paced, they'll be able to go out there and do it that way as well. It will be this actual recording. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask a poll real quick. I just want to see who I kind of have on here. Let me make sure, because I have several little polls I'm going to be asking today. It just lets me know who my audience is and what I need to cover and what I don't need to cover. If you can let me know how long that you have been participating in CACFP, it just gives me an idea. If I have anybody new, if you've been on the program for a long time and you just need a refresher. Also, it lets me know like who is my audience today. Okay, good. I did need to know if I have an adult daycare on here, and I do, because if you don't participate in that, then I'm not really going to go over that. Now, I do understand I have I see that I have at risk on here, schools or nonprofit. If you're trying to get your application approved, you can stay on, but I will tell you that we have a separate at-risk training. That's a 2-hour training, because we will not be going over anything at risk in here. The next one that we have will be next month on February, I think February 3rd. No, I'm sorry, February 24th. So if you're in this class just because you need to get your application approved, that's one thing. But if you want to learn about actual at-risk program, you're in the wrong class. That class is, may want to go to meal patterns this afternoon, but you will want to go to the at-risk class because we won't cover anything about at-risk in here. This is really just more for daycares and adult day. So again, we do have some adult day, which is great. So I know what I need to cover. Okay, so we are going to talk about your manuals. We sent out, so in the previous years, we had one manual, one big, thick manual, about 400 pages, but we did decide to do something different this year. We did a center training manual, a regular manual, an adult daycare manual, and an at-risk manual. And because what was happening is sometimes people would get confused about the forms they were looking at, or they'd look at information or not look at the right information. So we did break everything up. Now, when we go through the training, you're going to see stuff that says like page 4, and that refers to the center manual. And if you see anything that says AD with a dash, that means that's the page you'll find it in the adult daycare manual. Because if you have an adult daycare manual, if you look at it, it will say AD at the bottom next to the page numbers. Now, this book, again, is also in the resource library. We did mail these out, but if you are brand new, you haven't probably gotten one yet. You'll wait until you get approved before we send you one, but you can always go out and get the one that we have. The largest one we have is the Center Training Manual, and that one's about 250 pages. The other ones are like around 200. Like I said before, it was around 400 pages. So it's definitely shortened up quite a bit when we did, which is much nicer because you're only getting the pages that you need and you're not getting confused. Now, I'm going to talk about, so if you've been on the program for a while, which we have some that have, so when you are the people in the field that come out to conduct your review, we used to call them your consultant. I was in the field for 10.5 years and I went by a consultant, but we've changed the name. They're no longer a consultant because that's not really their job. They are a child nutrition program specialist. So we're trying to get in the habit of calling them a program specialist or a specialist. But this is the person that comes out to do your training. Again, if you can look in here to see who your person is. Now, we do have multiple consultants in Oklahoma, Tulsa, and Comanche County. And I'll show you where to find out if you don't know who it is, but it is listed by county. Their phone number is in here along with their email address. Now, their phone number that's located in here is a cell phone, so you can text them. You can also email them. When I was in the field, I will tell you right now, texting and email was the fastest way to get a hold of me. Because like if I'm at a daycare center and then I have like 5 minutes to stop, it's much easier for me to respond to a text or to an email than it was for me to call you back. Not that we won't call you back, but our field staff is in their field office usually about 1 day a week. It could be a little bit more now just due to the whole COVID situation. They could be in their field office a little bit more, but they're usually out and about at different locations. You can also call us at the state office if you have any questions. I will tell you that the state office, like a couple of us have been in the field, so we can definitely answer some of these questions. But a lot of the people in the office, they're the ones that handle the application and agreement, your DUNS, your license, anything on the back end. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of who handles what. As the office, we handle your application, all that stuff online. The person that comes out and looks at your day-to-day stuff that you're to fill out, like the things I'm going to be talking to you today, is mostly looked at by your program specialist. And you can email anybody at the State Department of Education. Our email address is firstname.lastname@sde.ok.gov. If you can email me, my name is Kendra Marbelt. I am the director of training for our division. My name is so if you looking at Zoom, if you see my video big, you should see my name there. You can switch it so you can see the slides big, and then you can see the video just short, just little. You trust me, you don't want me on your full screen. You can have the slides on the full screen, and just if you have me in them, because I'll kind of refer to some things and show you, but you don't have to have me blown up on your laptop or on your desktop. Okay, so as a reminder, and some of the stuff I go through every single training, it doesn't matter what the training is, I talk about some of the same things. And again, I don't refer to the at-risk manual here because we have a special at-risk training. So if you do go to the at-risk training, I'll tell you the page numbers there, but all the information I really talk about, some of it like this information is going to be in the at-risk manual as well. So all reviews are done unannounced. So we've been doing this for at least 5 years. We were one of the only states in the country that did not do unannounced at the time. So we were probably like, why are we doing ours announced? So we did do all of our reviews are now unannounced. As Cassie did send out the notification letter to everybody in a mass email about a week or two ago, just to let you know if you are up for review what we look at. Now, the notification letter has been specific. The things that are in there for the adults, what we have is an adult notification letter, what we need for regular centers. That's what it states in their notification letter. We don't have an index in our manuals because we had one manual, put it into 3, and we did not have time to do an index for all 3 manuals. I don't know if we're ever going to go back to having an index, but I will tell you the table of contents is very detailed. And if you go to the table of contents, the notification letter will be there to show you what page it is on. So as a reminder, when we come out, your records should be readily available at all times. So just so you're aware, when we come out, if you're not going to be there, we suggest that you email, like if you know you were going to go on vacation the last 2 weeks of December, we highly suggest that you email your consultant and just let them know. Our goal is not to come out when you're not there, but we don't know you're not there if you don't tell us. So make sure if you're not there and you don't tell us that you're not going to be there, that you have somebody that knows where your records are. It's very important. But again, if you know you're going to be gone for something, vacation, conferences, anything like that, just text your consultant, email your consultant, and just let them know what days you're not going to be there. Because again, our goal is not to come out when we're not trying to get you. It's just, we have to have our schedules filled out and 2 weeks in advance. And so we just have to place people where we have to place them. So as also a reminder that when we talk about a federal fiscal year, so when you're filling out our application, the federal fiscal year is October 1st to September 30th. That's the federal government's fiscal year. But just so you are aware, when you are doing your budget, or if we're looking at your profit loss information, it is based on your center or your organization's fiscal year. If you're a school district, then that fiscal year will be July 1st to June 30th. So when we look at information, you don't have to give it to us like on your budget and on your profit loss. It's not based on our fiscal year unless it is the same as your federal fiscal year. When I talked about reviews, people often ask, well, when do you get reviewed? So with CACFP on that side, we have to review. We cannot let your review go on more than 3 years. It can't go past 3 years. But we are required by USDA to do a percentage. So the percentage is 34%. So we all have to do 34% or more per year, or we get in trouble by USDA. So some of you will get reviewed every 3 years. Some of you, depending on the territory, might get reviewed every other year. If you're seriously deficient, we have to review you back-to-back years. So if you are seriously deficient, which means that your review did not go very well, that you had a lot of findings, then that means we have to come back the next year. But we cannot go more than 3 years. So you may get a review again every 3 years. It could be every other year, and it could 1 year you get it every 3 years, and then the next time it's 2 years. I would have issues in my territory. I was in Oklahoma County. Like I had 1 year that I had 10 daycares closed down. And I had like 3 of them that I was supposed to review, but they shut down. I have to pull somebody else. So someone who I didn't think I was going to review ended up getting pulled for review. So we don't have a choice in the matter. We have to do a certain percentage of with the USDA. So I was talking about the resource library and where to go. And this is where you go to get our information. So this is, again, where the application and agreement is. This is where the training calendar is. That's where you log in to sign up for the classes. And you can also access claims. Now, the things, like the top 3 things on the left-hand side, those items, you do have to log in to have access. The resource library, you do not, but the resource library is where we keep everything. If you ever need any information, you're going to find it in the resource library. We keep our memos out there from USDA. We keep the training manual out there. So this manual, the center training manual, is under center manual. If you're an at-risk or an adult daycare, your manual is going to be under your heading. We have interactive forms out there. So we have some forms that are in Excel. The food buying guide, and again, the slides and the handouts. The slides and the handouts are found under the training information section, which I'll kind of show you what it looks like in just a moment when you go into the resource library. So I know you guys are kind of in the middle of your renewal right now. Some of you may have been approved, but I just want to make sure that you are aware that once your application is approved, it is very, very important that you make any changes to your application as changes occur at your center or your organization. And the reason why is it's a working document. And when we come out to do a review, we do everything based on your application agreement. That's your meal times. That tells us your hours. It tells us everything. You can make changes every day if you need to. You can go in at any time, make changes, and then just email the person who's in charge of your application to let them know what you did. And then they can go in and approve it. And I'll show you who your person is if you're not quite sure. Now, we are in the middle of renewal. So renewal is a person who you've already had an application, but every year you have a renewal, you renew that application. As a reminder that the month that you originally submit your application to us. So let's just say that you were working on your application and you just got it submitted December 4th. If you originally submit your application to our office in December, we cannot pay you for November, October. It's in the month you originally submit it. So that doesn't mean, because with everybody, we've found things this year that you have to go back and change. But once you update it and once we approve it, you can claim meals in the month that you originally submitted your application and agreement. Now, if you're a new applicant, which I think we have some on here, if you are new, once you finish your online application, once it's approved, you can't just start claiming. What happens is they send a box to your specialist, your program specialist. They come out and do what's called an approval visit. you cannot start claiming until they come out and actually approve you. They have to make sure that your center exists, you have a kitchen, they have to find out all these things, that you have kids enrolled. So they have to come out first. Once they come out to do approval visit, then you're allowed to claim, and then they'll come back after a month and then look at your paperwork again, and then they'll help you do your first claim. But you don't start claiming or doing anything until your program specialist comes out, and they have, from the time that your application is approved, they have up to 30 days to come out. So don't hound them. Again, their schedules, they literally, that's what happens is I would go to my mailbox and I have a box out there and I have to look at it and be like, okay, they approved them on this date. I have to be out there by this date. And we will call you once we get the box. We can't do anything until we get something from the office. So you can call us, but until we get something from the office, we can't really schedule anything. So, and they'll call you to schedule it to make sure the date works for both of you. So I just want you to be prepared of how it works if you are new. So with the application and agreement, you must have a budget for CACFP. And the budget is projected for the year. It does need to be updated throughout the year to reflect what's going on at the center. And we are doing some things in steps right now. So this is going to come in very handy. I don't know if it's going to be the end of this year or the end of this year or the end of next year, but we do a lot of things based off of your budget. Now, I know for people that have been on the program for a while, they're like, I don't understand what's going on with all the financials information that's been going on the last couple of years, but this has always been in the rules and regulations with USDA. It's just something we didn't really look at very closely. We had an ME last year and we had to tell them our timeline of when we're getting all of these things into place, which we're doing now. So honestly, all this budget, all the financials is nothing new. It's just we as a state agency didn't look at it as closely as we needed to, but we are doing that now. Again, the budget in the application and agreement is based off of your fiscal year. And if you need any assistance with the budget, if you're new or even if you're not new, Cassie does an application training at least once a month. She tries to do it twice a month. It's just a lot of times because of COVID or anything else, but Christmas, everything, it's kind of only been once a month the last few months. But we also have a 1 hour YouTube. It's not an OSD Connect. It's out in the resource library. It's under financial and general forms that you can go out there and click on that, and it will help you fill out the VCA and how to fill out the budget. Because the budget did change from last year. If you were single-sided. So it's the budget's very new and the VCA is brand new for everybody. So if you do need some assistance with that, you can definitely go out there and watch the video, and she does a step-by-step on how to fill that out. Now when approving the budget, all expenses approved in child nutrition will be listed in the last column. So when you go into your budget in CACFP, it has institution, it has CACFP portion, and then it has what we approved. So we may, depending on what you have in there, either the amounts or just what type of information you have in there, we may require documentation. It doesn't mean anything's wrong, but sometimes we have to validate or we just need to look at it to approve it. Because when your consultant comes out, they're going to come out and look at a lot of this stuff, but some of the stuff like any training expenses, any advertising, travel, equipment, we may have to see documentation just so we have it in your file, that your consultant can have access to that, just to ensure that we approved your budget correctly. Even if you are not charging labor off to CACFP, you still have to list all your labor in the institution section. And it comes in very handy for a couple of reasons in the budget. And it will come in handy when we're starting to look at other things, but we have to know if you're financially viable. We have to know all of your business expenses and all your business revenue. And that plays into if you're financially viable, which is something else. And and we'll talk about it, but if you're not financially viable, you can't participate at all. So you have to list it in there to show us all of your center or all of your organization expenses and all of your revenue. We have to know everything regarding your center or your organization when it comes to the CACFP side. Now, I understand, I don't know if we have any in here today, but we have some entities that are part of a much larger situation, like and maybe part of a church, or maybe part of a the government. Maybe you're at one of our bases, our air bases. We won't look at the entire air base. We're going to look at really just your CACFP, your stuff, like your center, like the center side of, but we're not going to ask to see the whole entire Air Force or your entire church budget. We're going to look at your center part of your church budget. So now, if you do need to change some certain things in your application and agreement after it has been approved, there are some things that you have to have a form for. One is a meal service change form, and it is here in the manual. And that means like you need to serve more meals. You need to change the times that you're serving meals. You do need to do a form. If you're changing, like I was serving supper, but you're no longer going to serve supper, you want to add a supper, you have to do the meal change form. If you are wanting to be multi-sited, or you already are multi-sited, meaning you have multiple daycares, you have multiple eating sites, you do have to have an adding or removing site form. And then if you want anybody to have access to our system to be able to log in, they have to have a certificate of authority. That is not in the manual, but it is in the resource library. And this is the website that I was referring to. So this is that I showed earlier. So you can copy and paste that into your browser and it will take you here. This is, again, you don't have to log in for the resource library, but you do have to log in if you want access to the training calendar, if you need to enter a claim, or if you need to do anything with the application and agreement. Now you can give somebody a username and login, have access, and they can't touch anything, meaning like maybe you have multiple sites and you want the director at each site to be able to go to the training calendar and put people in there to go to training, but you don't want them to have they don't want them to touch anything in the application or in claims. It will let them go in and it will let them see, but they can't touch anything. It's called our read only, or you can even put on there just training access only. So that is an option as well. This right here is where you go to click on the resource library. Again, you do not have to log in. Anybody has access to the resource library. This is where you're going to find everything. Again, you can see here is adult daycare. This is from last year. It has the application, their manual, their adult daycare. This says section, but now it is the entire manual will be in the adult daycare section. There's a section called training information. That's where you can go to for OSCE Connect. There's other things that you can go out there for additional training that we have going on. And then we have training slides and handouts. And that's where you can find the slides to this. And every training that we do, we have the slides out there and we do have the handouts as well. So if you didn't get them, you can definitely go at any point in time and get it. If you did not log into the training calendar for this class, just make sure you go. You have until 9 p.m. tonight. We do not send out certificates for training. It shows up in the application and agreement system, and I'm going to show you where that's at. This is the business maintenance page. So we did do some changes to the business maintenance page right after the application came out. So it may have looked one way, and then now you go in and it looks something different. At the right here, as you can see, we have owner, executive director, and superintendent. This cannot be altered. You have to contact us with the certificate of authority for that to be changed. Down here is anybody that you want to have access to the system. You can have multiple people. There's no limit on how many that you have, but they're the people that can go and at least log in. Now on the business maintenance page, if you scroll down further below that, this is where you can change this. This is where you put your federal fiscal year. I think a lot of centers, most centers, it will be January to December. That's just kind of a hunch that we have, but this is your federal fiscal year for your organization or for your center. Down here in this purple section, it has assigned office staff. This is the person that is assigned to your center. In the office, they're the ones that do the approval. Now, sometimes with approval, you may have somebody else looking at it because if they need assistance, like sometimes we get so many, we have other people that are looking at it. But this is the person like throughout the year that you can contact. Like if you make changes or updates, you can email them and let them know to make any changes. And so we have 3 people. We have Jennifer Pryor, Lisa King, and Karen Davis. And then your field staff, that is your program specialist. This is the person that will come out and do your review. Now, if you're new and this may say Cassie Riddell for both, it means she's working on your application and agreement. And once it is approved, she will assign, once your application's approved, then she assigns this to an office staff and she assigns it to a field staff. And then right below that is the training record. This is where the information is going to be to show that you did training. If you have already registered, this is already going to show up down here. But once you attend, it will have a check mark. Now, when it comes time from like July to September, we do a ton of trainings and our trainings are very large. We have about 300 people on the trainings. This training is much smaller than that. So Sherry's the one that updates this. She has to pull the information from Zoom, but once she does, she'll probably get this done. Friday would be the latest, but there's a good chance she'll have this done by tomorrow. So you can come out here. If there's a check mark, it means that you qualified. You have to be on the Zoom call for so long, based on how long the class is, for you to get credit. And again, it will have a check mark right here. Now, eventually, we're trying to continually make changes, but sometimes when we make changes, it screws something else up. But we would like this to where it has your name on here, because we understand there could be 5 of you that are registered and maybe 3 of you attended and 2 did not. We would like this to say your name. And not only would we like it to say your name, but we would love it if you click on it, you can actually print out a certificate. So, but right now, this is how it is. And so, but we're working towards things. You know, this program, things got crazy when COVID happened. So we were using the training calendar before, but we really started utilizing it a lot more after COVID happened. Now, when you go in to do your application and agreement, I got a good question. When you add an authorized rep, does it send them an email to set up a login? So when you fill out the certificate of authority, if it's still going on the way it's always gone on, you have to send us the certificate of authority and then we set it up at our office. But what you can do in there is you can edit, like if their last name or something changes, you can edit it. But once we do set that up on our end, it will send them an email with their username and it gives them their 4-digit PIN, and then they have to set up their password. So very good question. And you can send that to the person that's in charge of your application and agreement. Very good question. And I don't have a lot on here, so you guys are you're free to unmute. I know a lot of you don't like to do that. But so you can definitely put your stuff in the chat. That works. So as a reminder that we tell people all the time, because they don't do this, is when you're filling out the application and agreement every year, when you fill it out on it used to be number 7, it may have scrolled down now because of the VCA, but there's the institution and state agency agreement. Now, usually when you go in there, you go down, you hit next page, and then you scroll down and put the date and hit submit. But a lot of people don't read it. That's the contract that you have with us. It's actually when I printed it out last year, it was 21 pages, and I don't think anything's been added to it. And as you can see at the very beginning, it talks about financial viability, administratively capable, and internal controls for program accountability. That has always been in there. Again, it's just something that we really haven't been looking at as closely just because of everything else. And then when COVID did happen, we did do some reorganizing in our office. And we had a director of training. We had a director. We had executive director and director of operations. And then once COVID happened and once Jennifer took into the executive director's position, we now have 3 directors underneath her: director of training, director of CACFP, and a director of schools. So we're able to focus on the programs as we need to, which have always really needed to be done. So that's a lot of the reason is we're able to focus on the programs the way that we've always really needed to do that. Okay, so now we're going to start going over the basic responsibilities of this training, of the manuals. I am going to ask some questions, like I said, throughout periodically. Let me see if I have any right now. Oh, I didn't stop sharing that. I apologize. Let me see, not quite yet. Okay, just because if we don't have anybody that is on here, we're not really going to talk about it. There's no need of going over anything that we don't need to. Now, if you haven't had a review in a while, just so you are aware, when you are up for review, we actually have to have a copy of all the paperwork that we look at for a review, including the day of review. So when we do a review, the review is based on the last month that you claim. We're validating that claim. So we are in January right now. So a lot of you have already claimed for December if your application's done. So if you've already claimed for December, then we're going to look at your December records. If, say, you're doing your application right now and you haven't claimed, we have to wait until you claim for this fiscal year before we can go out to do a review. Now, this is not our requirement. This is from state auditors. We get audited by state auditors and we get audited by USDA. And it is state auditors that have requested this. Now, I will state that it did come in handy during COVID because we haven't, and with COVID cases being really high right now, which all of our consultants are really focused on schools at this moment because schools are in session. We're doing school reviews. But once they don't do school reviews, they will be looking at CACFP, but it doesn't matter if it's CACFP or schools, we have to have a copy of everything. But it did come in helpful with COVID because they were able to not really be at your center as long because they were able to take this documentation and do stuff from their field office. So they may do that with the COVID cases. Since they have rows, they may ask for the documentation, do a lot of it, but then come and do meal observation. So we're going to talk about financial management. So this is a new section that has been added to all manuals. We did not have this in here. It does talk about the VCA, which is financial viability, capability, and accountability. Now, financial viability. So people get kind of confused about what this program is. They just think that, well, I serve meals and you give me money for those meals for me to serve them. And that's not the intent of the program. The intent of the program is you shouldn't need our money. Like, that's why we have to make sure you're financially viable. You don't need our money to keep your doors open. If USDA can't pay claims, then you're fine. You don't need our assistance. What the purpose of the program is it's like, if you're nonprofit, you don't have to have a certain percentage of free and reduced. But if you're a for-profit organization, you have to have a certain percentage of free and reduced. And the purpose of the program is to serve more nutritious meals to kids that may not have access to it, or just to serve more nutritious meals. So that's why we have to make sure that you are financially viable. That's why we look at your organization as a whole, because if there is an interruption in bills, or if there is an interruption in us being able to pay claims, it should not affect you at all. Not that it wouldn't some, because you're trying to serve better meals, but that's the purpose of the program. Now, I've been around for a while. I've been around for 13 and a half years, and I've been around a couple of times when the government shut down and we couldn't pay claims. And even a little bit during COVID, we had some times where we only got funds, like we were getting just small chunks of funds at a time. So we couldn't pay everything at one time, because we do pay weekly here for the most part. So that's the purpose why we have to make sure that you're financially viable, is we have to make sure if you're not financially viable, if your organization is not running in the black, or if you're not being subsidized to keep your company in the black, or even then you can't participate in the program. You have to show us that you're capable, that you have enough adequate staff and able to manage the operations to stay in compliance. And I get right now that's really hard because of COVID, and no one's getting employees. Like, nobody has employees right now. So we understand things like that, but we're just talking like overall that you should try to have enough staff. Like I said, right now things are very situational. It's very COVID, so don't freak out about that. But in general, if it was a normal time, they would make sure that you have enough program accountability, or that you are capable of running the program. And you also have to have accountability. That's making sure that you're doing the training that you're supposed to. If you have to do any monitoring, you're doing the record keeping, it's having program oversight. So we will look at VCA. I actually did not realize that VCA was going to be coming out this year. I thought it was going to come out next year in the application and agreement, but we always were supposed to look at VCA, but we're going to continue. We always have to look at VCA as long as you're on our program. It's not going away. Like I said, it's actually been around for a while. We just have not been doing our due diligence and looking at it as close as we needed to. Now, financial viability, again, when I talk about financial viability, it means you don't need our money to keep your doors open. So we do have VCA now in the application and agreement, but we also have a paper document. And the paper document we started last year, we also are using it this year. So you fill it out in the application and agreement. But if you are brand new, like if your organization is brand new, you're a new center coming onto the program, you're a new owner opening up with a new agreement number, or if you were seriously deficient, which seriously deficient means that you had a lot of errors in your previous review, then you have to fill out the VCA document. That is emailed to you by Cassie. It's a 12-page document, but you also have to submit to us documentation to validate it. So it's a lot of the same information. It's just you have to actually send us documentation to validate the information that you're putting down on there. So that's the difference. Now, when we do come out to do a review, we have to look at profit loss information. We call it profit loss, but we have to look at your financial viability information. And I will tell you, again, I've been on staff for 13 and a half years. And since I've even been on staff, financial viability has always been a question on there. But we're trying to do a better job of explaining, and one, looking at it, and two, explaining everything to you and why we need it and what's the importance of it. So we do come out to do a review. We do have to have we have to have what we call financial viability, or like a profit loss. We have to look at something as an organization as a whole. So you can give us a year-to-date report if you have a profit loss, or what they call a P&L. If you have a revenue and expenditure report, we will look at that. If you have anything that you look at for QuickBooks, if you have an accountant, what do you give your accountant? What do they give you back? Or any other documentation or report that you use to close out your books at the end of the fiscal year. Some of you may do Excel spreadsheets, but we have to have this information. So we understand when we come out to do a review, this is not going to be exactly readily available, but we do need you to know that we do need this when we come out to do a review. Now, this documentation can be an annual report. It can be monthly. It can be per semester, per quarter. It's however your timeline when you get reports. A lot of you, I think, will probably have an annual report, but some of you may do a monthly. Some of you may use an accountant and they give you a report every semester. Some of you get it quarterly. So it's really whatever you have on file. We will take the last one that you have. Now, this is also something new for this year. This is for our for-profit entities only. We only have about 12 in Oklahoma. I was about to say United States. We have about 12 in Oklahoma that this will affect. If you are a for-profit entity organization, if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, then we will come out. We provide this. We actually are contracting out for this service, but every year that we as a program specialist, as child nutrition, is coming out to do a review, any year that we're not out there doing a review, we're going to send this contracting team to come out and do a program specific audit. Now, again, this is done by organization. So people get confused because they're like, well, I'm not multi-sited. I have 4 sites, but they're all under their own site. Well, you're an organization as a whole and you own all 4 sites. So if all those 4 sites, you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, then we have to come out and do a report. Now, a lot of nonprofits, you already get this. You already have to do this. You submit it to us, but this is for our for-profits. And when we talk about federal funds, we're talking about our reimbursement. We're talking about contracting, which is when they swipe the EBT. If you get any title funds, if you get any grants, some people get, like our school districts get commodities. Those are all federal funds. The only federal fund that you don't have to list is if you got the PPE loan. They said you don't have to do that, but every other thing that is from the government, federal government, like if you're a Head Start, you're federally funded essentially. So if you receive more federal funds than $750,000 for your organization, then, and we will let you know, but we will be sending out this team and they will come out and do a program specific audit every year that we do not do a review. So let's get into eligibility, because I do have an adult daycare on here. So I'll be talking about both adult daycare, and I'll be talking both about just a regular daycare center. Now, at risk, again, this is not an at-risk training, but at risk does not have to do some of these items. And that training is on February 24th. So at 1 o'clock, it's a 2-hour training. And we go over the rules and requirements for at risk. So family size and income application. Now, this is for everybody, but you cannot complete it for the parent or guardian. They have to do it. The only thing that you can put out on there is the child or the participant that's enrolled. You can put their name on there, their first and last name only. That's the only thing that you can do. A child care center and an adult daycare, you have to distribute it, a new application every year. You have to give it out to them. Now, adult daycare, they don't have to send it back, but we do really want our child care centers to try and get it back, and I'll explain why. Again, all applications must be distributed on the current year form, and we have done some things to make that a lot easier than in previous years. And again, adult daycares must distribute the application each year. However, it does not have to be returned. And I will tell you as well, it's 9:45 right now. I really don't take a break during this course. If you need to take a break or need to step away, please feel free to do so. We understand you may use the restroom, you may get a phone call, but I will not be taking a break. When it's all day, I take a morning break and none in the afternoon. But there's some things, like I said, that we'll be talking about, some adult and some childcare. So if it doesn't pertain to you, then maybe you can just step out at that time. But just to give you an idea, I don't take a break on this. It's about a 3-hour training. I will try to get done. I try to get done about 11:30. I try to have some cushion in there for questions, but just kind of an FYI, I will not be taking a break. But if you need to take one or step away, please feel free to do so. Now, a child care center, it is not required for the parent to fill out part 2, which is the income section of the application. It's not required. They really should fill out everything else, but just not part 2. The enrollment form is required for regular daycare centers. So it is required for children from child care and Head Start. So they both have to have enrollment. The enrollment form has been added to the household application this year. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the enrollment form, because there's a couple of things that you can do. Adult daycare centers are not required to have an enrollment form. So that is something that you don't need. So when we talk about enrollment form, adult daycares, you can kind of zone out on this. So when it does come time for the enrollment form, the top section of the application, and I'll show you the top section of the application, is the CACFP enrollment form. Now, it includes the enrolled person's name, the date of birth, the days in attendance, the normal hours of care, and the normal meals served while they are in care. That is what is on the CACFP enrollment form. So if you are a daycare and you use our application and agreement, you can give them that. If they fill out the top section, that's the enrollment form. Now, you may have some parents that don't want to fill out the application at all and refuse to even fill out the top part, because to them, that's still the application. We also have the CACFP enrollment form in the manual, and you do need to have one per child. So I'll tell you right now, when we mailed these out, and if you get a hard copy, it says in here right now, Head Start enrollment form. I have changed it to now say CACFP enrollment form. I worked on it, but I haven't got it uploaded yet into the system. All of our most current, anytime we make updates to this, it will be out in the resource library. So if you can use the Head Start one as well, it will say Head Start. Or if you create your own, like Head Starts create their own, I think, enrollment forms, or maybe you create your own enrollment form for like your daycare. If you create your own enrollment form for your daycare, you're not, like, say, using DHS's, as long as it has the enrolled children's name, the date of birth, normal days in attendance, normal hours of care, and the meals that they receive, and you send it to your program specialist and they approve it, you can use that form. So I think what I've been told with Head Starts is that they are allowed to create their own enrollment form. So in that case, if you add all the information we need, to your enrollment form, then you only have to have the one. So those are your three options right there for when it comes to enrollment forms, but we do have to have enrollment on all children. Okay. We don't have to have an application, but we do have to have enrollment. And even if they fill out that top section, that's fine. It's just if they don't fill it out, then you need to get a different enrollment form for them. And right now it says Head Start, but I have changed the name on the one that will be online tomorrow. I'll be training all day today. I'll try to have it out there tomorrow. I've kind of been working on a couple of different things that kind of came up. That's why it was not up there before this training. A federally funded Head Start, we don't really have any of you on here right now, but if you have anybody that does attend a federally funded Head Start or Even Start, those children are automatically free because we do have some daycares that do participate with an Even Start program. The center, you must have a Head Start enrollment information form, which is in this manual. It lists all the kids that are enrolled in the Head Start program with their age and the date that their entry date and their drop date. And then also, again, they have to have an enrollment form if they're Head Start, because they're all free if they're in the Head Start, but they're still required to have, enrollment form. And again, the one in the manual says federally funded Head Start, but the one on the app in the manual online will start saying CACFP enrollment form. Now we're going to go over two types of approvals. We're going to talk about income and categorical, and this will go for both daycare centers and our adult daycare centers. So this is right now the current copy of our child care center application and agreement. So this is the application that you give the parents. This one has been updated for 2 years. So the last 2 years, we've been using this. We got this approved by USDA. So it's a one-page application that you give your parents. We've heard good things that people have really liked it. So this is the top section right here. This is the enrollment form section up at the top. We did make some corrections to this from last year. One is, for instance, like we now put the year. So it says you're 2021 to 2022. So that way now you know that you're on the correct form. The instructions right here said if you put in any SNAP TANF or FITPR number to go down to part 2. Well, really, if you fill this part out, either the foster SNAP TANF FITPR, you really are to go down to part 3. So that has been corrected. Something else that has been added is this is for all the children enrolled in the center. This is for any additional people in the household that are not listed above. This wording has been corrected because it did state only those with income, but this is really any other household member, including children that are not enrolled in this daycare, go right here. Now, sometimes you'll have it where maybe grandma lives with the family. So grandma's down here and grandma receives SNAP TANF or FITPR, but nobody else in the household does. So we did add a column, said all other income was to be listed right here. And we also added SNAP TANF or FITPR. So that way, if somebody down here does have SNAP TANF or FITPR, you can, and I'll explain what all this stuff is. You can list it right here. And then the other thing that we did update and correct was this down here below this big thick line. This is for your center to fill out. So once a parent fills out this application, the application is not approved until someone at the center fills this out down here, this data. Now, and if you're new, your consultant, your program specialist is going to come out and they're going to help you do all this. So that's why if you're new, we teach you this, and then your program specialist comes out and shows you again, because it's just very overwhelming. This information I'm giving is very overwhelming. So don't freak out. You're going to forget this when I talk to you about it. But your program specialist is there to walking through all this again, and then as many times as you need to with technical assistance. But when you approve them, you're telling us how you approve the application. And it did say free meals, reduced meals, and paid meals, and that's more school terms. So we did correct this to say free, reduced, and not eligible. So those are some corrections. We got this application from another state, and then we kind of used our application too. And that's why some of the wording was off, because of the state that we got it from. So we corrected that. And some was just error, like our error. So on the application for a child care center, you have to have the top information filled out. It is the enrollment. Then again, we talked about in part 2, that income section, that's where you list all other household members. Even if they don't have income, they have to go there. We have to list everybody. You'll add the top section, say there's 4 kids that are enrolled in your center and there's 3 people in the household that are not enrolled. So that means there's 7 people in that household. If they have income, they're going to put their on that application that I just showed you. They only put monthly income. That's all they put on there is their monthly income. They don't put weekly. If they put it in there in any other way, you do need to contact them and tell them that it needs to be in their monthly. And you can kind of tell if, say, they put $25,000 in there, you're probably assuming that that's their annual salary, not their monthly. So you can contact them. But once they fill this out for their income application, if they're wanting to be approved by income, they have to have adult signature and date, and then they must list the last 4 of their social security number. Or there is a box, and I'll show it to you very quickly. There is a box down here that says, I don't have a social. So they can either click on that box that they don't have a social or list the last 4. So they have to, if it's an income application, they have to fill out this top section. Part 1 is optional for everybody. It's the racial, ethnic. Part 2 is their income. And then part 3 is where they sign and date it and then put their last 4 of their social. Now, okay, let me see here. Now we're going to talk about adult daycare for about 5 minutes. So adult daycare, we have not changed anything with the adult daycare. The only thing that we do is we put FY22 up here. So you are making sure that you're using the correct application and agreement every year, because we do have a lot of problems with that with all of our entities, that they're not using the newest form. So what is a better way to figure out if you're using the newest form is if we have the year on there. I can't believe we've never had the year on there, just to be honest with you. Because if you print it out, you can print it out of here and it will show on the bottom, but you can also print it out from our forms and it doesn't have anything at the bottom. So we have the year on here now, but nothing has changed with this application. So up at the top, it's all household members are up at the top. Then we're talking about income we'll talk about, well, right here is where they put their benefits, and it will tell you what benefits that they could do. They can use SNAP, FIDPER, SSI, and Medicaid. They can put that here. This is where the income goes. And then down here is the signature for the guardian at the household or parent. And then at the so this is still a 2-page application. Again, we only got approval for the child care center. We did not change anything with the adult day. So it is still a 2-page, and on the back side, it will have on there, that's where the adult daycare, that's where they approve that application. So again, in part 1 is you list all the adults enrolled in the adult daycare. In part 2 is all the other household, everybody else that lives in the household, and you may need more lines. You can put them on, or put them on the back. You can do something if you need more lines. In part 4, so once they put out their income, again, if they have no income, they have to check mark the box, list all income that they might have. In part 4 is the signature of the adult or guardian, and it has to be dated. And then that's where, again, they put the last 4 of their social or indicate that they don't have a social. Now, on the application agreement for adult day, and we also have applications if you need them in a different language. USDA does have applications in multiple languages. I can't remember if it's 32 or 64 languages. You can go out to the resource library and go, I think it might be under general forms. It's either general forms or center forms. And we do have the link to where you click on it and it takes you to USDA website, and you can get the application in any language that you need. Now, the applications that are out there, those are all USDA, so they're going to look very different than the childcare one. And some of them may have not been updated in 10 years, but we just use what USDA has out there. Now, those applications that are in another language and those applications for adult daycare, they can put their income on there as weekly, every 2 weeks, twice a month, or monthly. They have a choice, or annual. They can do annually. They can do it however they choose to. Now, the CACFP one, it's just by month. We're trying to make it easier. They have to put their monthly salary on there. But these others, they're allowed to put it in other forms. Now, you do have to do a conversion to annual only if you have multiple incomes on the application and they're at different variants, so, or intervals. So an example is maybe you have one parent that gets paid weekly and one parent that gets paid monthly. So you you have to make them both to annual, which you would take the weekly salary, multiply it by 52. You'll take the monthly, divide it by 12, and then add it together. Now, if they both get paid monthly, or say they both get paid twice a month, then you can just add up the twice a month and go to the income scale, which is in the application, which is in the manual, and you can approve it that way. But if they're in two different intervals, then you do have to make them annual. You have to calculate it to where it's annual and then add the salary from there. But that's only for adult day, and that's only if you use an application in another language. So application, income approval application, again, part 2 of the income and enrollment of the application for a child care center. If it is not complete, like if they leave it blank, if they put an X, if they put an A in part 2, then it is considered an incomplete application and it goes into the not eligible category. And I'll talk about that in a moment, but that application is not approved. Now, adult daycare, if you are at adult daycare center, if they don't complete it, if they don't complete the income part, or maybe they don't even give you back an application because they don't even give you one back, then they will go as not eligible as well. But all applications that you get must be approved at face value. Okay. Now, we do have some definitions here in the manual, and I don't go over them, but if you need some definitions, you can definitely go here to find them. So if you are trying to determine the household size, you'll go to these pages. If you're trying to determine household income, any exclusion or military exemptions, this is where you're going to go. And some examples of this is when people call in is like determining the household size. So I may be a parent, I call and be like, I have a child in college. Can I put them on the application? Yes, you can. Even though they're away at school, they're still part of the household. Determining household income. If it's like, if I get child support on a regular basis, if I get child support every month, do I put that on here? Yes, you do. Any income exclusions, if you are a foster parent and you are getting money from foster, from DHS to take care of that child, you do not have to put that on the application. And then again, we have some military exemptions. I know like Agent Orange is on there. So that just gives you a small brief example of each of the definitions. But go out here, if someone asks a question, it's it's 1 page, 1 to 2 pages. If you can't find it, then reach out to your program specialist and they will be able to help you. Now, if they do not report any income, that means they check mark the boxes, no income, or wrote a 0 in there. That means you can approve it as an income application as long as they put their social security and sign it. But if they just leave it blank, if they put an X or put an A, they're just not wanting to fill it out. And that is considered a not eligible application. Okay, there is a difference between a no income application that they're just saying we don't get income, and it's plausible. If you get student loans, if I'm a kid, if I'm in school and I have a baby and I take my baby to your daycare, but I put on their 0 income, it may be because I'm living off student loans, and you don't have to put student loans on your application and agreement. So it could be plausible. If the center, if you are aware or have knowledge of them intentionally misreporting income, meaning like they tell you that they don't have any income, but they're coming in every day, they're dropping their kid off and they're in their Sonic hat and Sonic shirt about to go to work, that's misreporting income. This is a federal document. What they sign is a federal document. So if they are misreporting any income, contact your program specialist and they will give you more information on what to do. We have what's called verification for cause, and they'll walk you through those steps. Now, that was over income application. What I just showed you was if they have income and you're approving their application by income. A lot of you are going to approve an application by SNAP TANF, or FitPer. In our adult daycares, you can do it by Medicaid or SSI. Now, if you see something and they put Sooner Care on there, Sooner Care does not qualify. In Oklahoma, Sooner Care is based off of free and reduced. It can only be based off of free, which is not. So if someone puts their Sooner Care number on there, you cannot automatically approve it for free. If they list a SNAP, TANF, FitPer, or Medicaid or Social Security number for adult daycares, then that application is automatically free and everybody on that application is free. Now we mostly see SNAP, which SNAP is food stamps. And it starts with A, B. So they have to put their case number on there, and their case number will be A, B, C, D, H, J, or T, followed by 6 or 9 digits. The last 3 digits will be like a 001, 002. So just kind of an FYI on that, it has to be 6 or 9 digits. Now, TANF is a C or an H, so a lot of times you're not going to know the difference between SNAP or TANF. And then we have FitPer, and what FitPer is Food Distribution Program on an Indian Reservation. And we usually see a Social Security number on that, but sometimes it just depends on the tribe. What that means, FitPer means, is that it doesn't mean that the child has an Indian roll card. What it means is that family is getting commodities from a tribe. So if they list a number there, and it may be a Social Security, and you can even ask them, what is the number? If they say it's a FitPer number, that means that they're getting commodities from a tribe. It doesn't mean that they have an Indian roll card. It means that they're actually getting food from a tribe. Now, again, SNAP is going to be the most common, and SNAP and TANF both have C and both have H. So it doesn't really matter which one it is. We're just letting you know what counts. Now, again, as long as you have one SNAP, TANF, or FitPer number, everybody in the household is free. And even the same with adults. But a lot of times you're not going to have, say, a husband and wife, you're going to have mostly just one person. It's not uncommon. I mean, it's more common to have one, but not that you can't have multiple people from one house at your adult daycare center. But if you do have any of that, SNAP, TANF, FitPer, Medicaid, they're all free. Once they fill out, once at the very top, they put their SNAP, TANF, or FitPer number in, all they have to do is sign that application. That's it. And it's sign and date it. Then you can approve it. If they put income on there, you can disregard the income. You don't have to look at the income if they list it on there, if they have a SNAP, TANF, or FitPer. Now, if there's a foster child is a child that's awarded to the state. So if you have a parent that comes in, or a guardian that comes in and says, I'm the child's grandparent, I'm just their guardian, or if they come in to ask you about it, what a foster child is a child that is awarded to the state. They are literally in state custody. A guardianship is just like, say I'm a grandparent and I have the child until things get figured out, but I receive no funds from the state and the child is not state custody. So a guardianship is not the same thing as a foster, but you approve applications on face value. So if they put foster on there, we're not asking you to see papers. We're not asking for that. But I'm just telling you know that if a parent or someone comes up and asks you about it, that's the difference between a guardianship and a foster child. Now, if you have a foster child, they put their name on there and they mark the box that they're a foster. That foster child is automatically free. If there are other children in the household, then you do have to approve the other children in a different way. They're not automatically free because a foster child is listed on there. So you may have a foster child, that child will be free, and you could have everybody else maybe they list no income for anybody else. Then those other kids would be not eligible. So you can have an application with 2 different approvals on it. Now, again, the foster family does not have to include foster payments on their application. And again, just because the foster child is free, it does not automatically qualify the other children. You have to approve the other children in a different way. Now, the application, just for everybody to know, we have seen this and we just need you to make sure you're aware. A center cannot just go to that EBT machine and be like, oh, well, that has an H on there. I'm going to write that down, then they must get SNAP. No. When they're swiping, when they swipe in on that EBT machine, That's because they get childcare benefits. They get daycare assistance. Daycare assistance and SNAP, TANF, and FIPR are completely different. SNAP is food stamps. TANF is temporary assistance for needy families. These are different programs. It is solely based on that. Like, and not just that, but like, say you foster to adopt, you can have a family that does not qualify for free meals by income. They don't get SNAP, TANF, or FIPR, but they adopted a foster child, but the DHS will still give them, they'll give them daycare benefits until that child is like 6 years old. So just because they swipe in does not mean that they're getting SNAP, TANF, or FIPR. They could be, and it could be the same number, but don't go to that machine and just write it down because a parent swipes in. Don't do that. You can ask them, be like, hey, do you get SNAP, TANF, or FIPR? But don't assume because they swipe in for daycare assistance that they qualify for SNAP, TANF, or FIPR, because the guidelines are way different, way different. So if there is any information listed on the application and agreement, and you're not quite sure, like if it's missing any information, if you cannot read it, if it's questionable or inconsistent, reach out to the household. Call them up and be like, hey, you forgot the last 4 of your social. You can put it on there. You can put it on there, but you must document any changes. So if you write it on there, you need to state, talk to mom, forgot social, added it, you initial it, and the date that you talked to them. I will tell you right now, I was at a center, and I'm pretty organized and pretty neat about things. So I understand this. I understand it. But if you have an application, you should really have the parents be filling it out in pen. If the parent changes anything, you can mark it out. Do not erase it. Do not use whiteout. I bring into these situations. It looks like you're altering the application. The application should like messy. Like if you're like, I couldn't read what they wrote. Is this a 3? Is this an 8? Do they get paid $300 a month or $800 a month? You couldn't tell. Call them, ask them, and then you can clarify it by writing a note next to it, and you can like make it an 8 and be like, called parent, couldn't tell if they receive $800 a month, corrected it, and then initial it. It can be messy, but do not white out, do not erase, because it looks like you tampered with a federal document. It needs to look very messy. But you can, the only thing you cannot do is you can't sign it for them. If they have to sign it. So now, as I mentioned before, once the application is filled out by the parent, they send it to you, and that application is not approved until someone at the center approves it. And you can have 10 people if you want. You decide. We don't care who approves it. That's all up to you. But it's not approved until either on the bottom of the center or on the back side at the bottom where it says institution information only. That is what you fill out. Once you fill that out, then the application is approved. If I come to your center and you have all these applications and you say that they're all free, they're reduced, and I look and you did not fill out that bottom part, all of those applications should go on the not eligible because they're not approved. They're not approved until someone at the center or sponsor signs and dates it on how you approved it. And again, if you're new, don't freak out too much. Your program specialist is going to come out and show you how to do this. But before, if you're a new center, before your program specialist comes out, you do need to obtain those applications from your parent, and then they're going to show you how to approve them. So once you have an application and you approve it, then you put that child or those children on the correct roster. You're going to have a roster for free, you're going to have a roster for reduced, and you're going to have a roster for not eligible. That's where that you list them. Now, what you do is at the end of the month, if that child was in attendance and that child ate a meal, you're going to mark on the roster for that month that they participated. And again, it's based on how you approve the application, whether they go in the free, the reduced, and the not eligible. Again, with the rosters, you list all the participants enrolled at your center. Even if you have somebody not participating in CACFP, they still need to be listed on a roster. And the reason being is because when we come out to do a review, we take your attendance records and we're going to see that you have, say, Bob Smith. Bob Smith was in attendance, but he's not on a roster. So we're going to think that you forgot him, that you were supposed to claim him and you didn't. But what you do is if say Bob Smith, and people are like, well, why would he not participate? I've been to some centers where they don't serve an afternoon snack after 4, so those kids don't get a meal while they're there. I've been to centers where the child has such severe allergies that the parent brings all the food. They don't participate in the program. If you have a child that does not participate in a program, you do not need a CACFP enrollment form. You do not need an application and agreement, but they do need to be listed on the roster. And what you'll do, or even if you have an infant that has an infant meal waiver form, which we'll talk about later, if they're not participating in the program, you can just put NP for the months that you're not claiming them, or I for an infant on the infant waiver. You can just put an I for you're not claiming them. It just means that yes, they're there. You know that they're there, but you are not claiming the meals, but you do recognize that they are in attendance. And then again, at the end of the month, we take the total number of free, reduced, and not eligible, and that will go in your participation data on your claim, which again, your consultant will come out to show you how to do your first claim. So record keeping, let's get into record keeping. So again, all forms must be maintained daily by month at each site for any institution participating in CACFP. All records must be kept at the site on location that's approved in your application. We do understand that you're going to have maybe you're multi-sited, and at the end of the month, you have them all send the records to this one location. That's why we have to know where your records are kept. You can't keep your records at home. They need to be kept at one of your sites or at a central office. If we have anybody in here that does participate in at-risk and is also a daycare center, then you have to keep separate records for meals and for at-risk. You need to check the appropriate box for that. At-risk, just a reminder for those that are daycare centers participating in at-risk, you're only allowed to participate in at-risk during the school calendar year. So you can serve meals during spring break on at-risk and for Christmas break, but you can't do it during summer. So if the school that you're around, if they start school August 15th and end May 15th, you cannot serve meals May 16th. You can only do it during the school calendar year. Again, if you don't know what at-risk is a separate program. And a lot of you, I would tell you, don't get on it. Like if you're a daycare center, there's really no reason for you to get on it. Some of you, it benefits. If you are a nonprofit and have very little free and reduced, I would suggest it. But it depends upon your location as well. But for at-risk, what it is, it has to be for school-age kids only. It is organized primarily to be an after-school program. You have to have an education or enrichment component, and you must be in attendance area of less than 50% free and reduced eligible meals for that school site. But that's been waived because of COVID, but this is just a small synopsis of what at-risk is. So you may not even qualify, but if you just want to know what at-risk is, if you have more questions about at-risk, I can answer those after today. So other record keeping forms is the daily attendance records. We have arrival and departure times, and you may be required to do it. A lot of you are not, because we're going to suggest another form of record keeping. But a lot of times if we do need time in and time out sheets, we're not going to ask you to keep we know you have to have DHS time in and time out sheets. So I'm not going to make you keep separate records that you would for DHS. And we can, by the way, people do ask, but we can look at DHS records. We are a state agency, just like DHS can go in and look at our records. We're a state agency and we can look at each other's records. So just kind of an FYI, people ask us that all the time because we will ask to see your time in, time out sheets from DHS or for online. They're like, well, you can't, you're not DHS, but we can because we're a state agency and we can look at both. And like I said, DHS can look at our information as well. So meal count, we have a meal count worksheet. Just a reminder of the meal count worksheet. When you take meal counts, it must be taken at the point of service, and your point of service is at the time that you give a meal to the child. That's the point of service. You give, when it's a reimbursable meal, that's when you do your meal counts, but we do a meal count worksheet. You don't do it based off attendance because we don't know if they got the kid could have left for a doctor's appointment and then parent took them to lunch. So you have to do your meal count whenever you give the child a meal. Also, do I have anybody on here? Let me see if I have the poll question. I thought I added it, but if you serve, oops, wrong thing. It's not on here. Okay. Does anybody in here serve more than 3 meals per day at your center and claim them? Like you serve breakfast, lunch, PM snack, and supper. And you can just say yes or no, just to give me an idea. If anybody's at risk, you can only do 2. So the deal is just to give you a small little thing, because people are like, what, I can have like 5 meals, serve 5 meals? You can, but a child can eat 5 meals even. They can be there the entire time, but you cannot claim more than 3 meals per day per child. So we have what's called the DROMS form. And the DROMS form is what we're really going to suggest that you do to ensure that the kids are not being claimed more than they're supposed to. And it is both an attendance and a meal count worksheet. Now, I have some centers that only do serve 3 meals per day, and they really do like the DROMS form. We have a DROMS form in our interactive forms that's only for 3 meals. So if you do like this form, it's much shorter. It has PMs, it has breakfast, lunch, PM snack. So you can use it. Again, it's used as your attendance and your meal count. So it can be both. But since I don't really have any, I have a lot of people that haven't answered, but if you did serve more than 3 meals per day, again, this ensures that you're not, the ones that are circled on here are the ones that this child ate 4 meals that day, but they're only claiming 3, and they have to indicate to us which their meals they're not serving. So, but again, if you like this form, we call it the daily record of meals form, but for short, we call it the DROMS. But again, we also have it for those that serve only 3 meals per day. Now we have another meal count worksheet, and there's a small example at the bottom. This is what a lot of you tend to do. So we did make a change from last year. We did the change for a couple of reasons, but we do have it separated now from infants to child care to children. So it can be front and back, and it was landscape, but it's now portrait. So it does have some more room on it. But so if you do use the interactive one that we have in, so if you go to the resource library and scroll all the way down to, it's called worksheet section, that's all of our forms in Excel. And a lot of them will do the math for you, but they were disappeared for a couple of weeks. There was a system, like they were there, but you couldn't visibly see them. Everything's back now. It came back on Friday. But if you use the interactive form, we did break it up again to children, to infants, and then we still have the other form that has everybody on there. We did it for a couple of reasons. One is a lot of people would actually forget to claim the infants, even though they were on there. So it's kind of just a reminder if you have 2 different sides. But we also needed the space. We needed to add something to the form, and we weren't able to do that. But on page P49, now the adults, yours is the same because you don't have infants. So yours didn't change, but page 49 is for that of the daycare center that's in here. Now we're going to talk about food purchasing forms. So a food purchasing form is required if the receipt or invoice is not itemized. So a non-itemized receipt would be one that you would get from, say, Walmart, the paper, Crest, Homeland, Reese's, any place like that. That is not itemized. If an item is not reimbursable, just so when you use this form, if the item that you bought is not reimbursable, but it is an ingredient in a reimbursable meal, it can be listed in food and milk. And we're going to talk about things that do and do not count food-wise in the meal patterns section. But so for instance, like if you have a deli meat that doesn't meet requirements, if you serve a cheese product which doesn't meet requirements, it's the good cheese that melts, or maybe like ketchup. Ketchup is not, or you use it as an ingredient, that can all go into the food and milk section. Because they're ingredients, or it helps make the meal taste better, so kids will eat it. If you cannot determine what an item is on a receipt or invoice, then it needs to go in the non-reimbursable section, and I'll talk more about that here in a moment. And if it is an item that does not count towards a reimbursable meal, then it's unallowable for CACFP, and it goes in the non-reimbursable section. Things like that would be like a cookie, anything such as, or a chicken nugget that doesn't have a CN label, it would go in the non-reimbursable section. So I did update this manual to reflect this because it's always been an issue, and I was kind of driving me crazy. So I'm like, no, we're going to start talking about this. So the reason why there's some highlighted on here is because this is very common. It's not highlighted in the manual, but it is highlighted on here. The reason why is because, like, an example that says this information that I put on here is from an actual receipt from Walmart or from Crest. Like it said, no, I need to, no, that's exactly what it was. So there's tub, which it was butter. You need to say if the receipt said tub, but it was butter. So in parentheses, put next to it what it actually was. Right here, this KMOJK SHRF, this was shredded Colby Jack. So just put Colby Jack cheese. And then I saw twin 18 PEG, those were eggs. So if I'm looking at a receipt, I don't know what twin 18 PEG is. So list on here what the receipt states, but next to it, let us know what it is. Like the other one was, and this one I had to go to Walmart website to figure it out. It said Calm Pantry, and it was cream of mushroom soup. So again, these are actual examples that came from real receipts. This GVRTN, it's Rotini, but they were great value brand Rotini noodles. So if you wrote on here just the GVRTN, and you didn't write down Rotini next to it, and you don't know what that is, and I don't know what that is, then you have to move it to the non-reimbursable section. Went too far over. You have to put it down here. So when you have a receipt that is not itemized, and again, we'll talk about what an itemized receipt has on it, then it needs to be put on this form. Now, you will have a food and milk section, you will have a food related section, and then you'll have a non-reimbursable section. The total on this form must match the receipt total. It can be off by a penny, but it needs to match. It can be off by a penny. And the original receipt must be stapled to it. Even if it's faded, you can also make a copy of it, but it has to be attached to this form. Now, that form is not required if you do have a receipt that is very detailed and it is itemized. And when it's itemized, it shows you the quantity, the weight, the size, and the price. So some examples of itemized receipts is if you do like grocery pickup or delivery. If you buy your food and milk from a vendor like Beneke, Cisco, Tankersley, US Foods. Sam's, if you do go in there and do like the Sam's click and pull, it will pull it more as it's itemized. It's very detailed. So, but what you still need to do on those receipts is you still need to break it out, and you don't have to do the itemized form, but just say you went and did a grocery pickup and you have foil on there, and then you have cereal, and then you have a pop. Just put on there at the bottom of the receipt, you can put food and milk, you can put supplies and not reimbursable, and then just tell us the total. So you don't have to, you may want to highlight it just so we know, but because you have to have it broken out to do the expenditure worksheet. But just a reminder that if it's itemized, because like if you do grocery delivery or grocery pickup, it will have a picture. Say you bought Cheerios, 32-ounce box of Cheerios. It will have the picture. It will say 32-ounce box of Cheerios, and then it will tell us the price. It's itemized. Now, just a reminder, when it comes to receipts and invoices, there's some things that we can and cannot take. We have to have the entire receipt. And we do need the original, even if it is faded, and you can make a copy of it, but we do have to have it, and it does have to be attached to that food purchasing form. Now, in a receipt that has been altered or is cut off at the bottom, like if the barcode is missing, we can't accept. We might be able to, but it has to be, we'll validate that on your bank statements and your credit card statements. Now, in a receipt that doesn't have a date, we don't know when it was purchased. Was it purchased in December? Was it purchased in April? We don't know. And any grocery or pickup receipt, it has to be the final receipt. It can't be when you submit it. I'm legally blind. I haven't driven in 3 years. I have my groceries delivered. And especially with COVID going on, I always get substitutes. I always get, like, they send me something different. So that's why we have to have the final receipt. is because we have to know what you actually got. Maybe you wanted squash and they gave you zucchini instead, which has happened to me. So you have to wait until that final receipt, not the submitted and not the processed. So now every month you take all your receipts and all your food purchasing forms if you need them. You take all of them and then you list them on your expenditure worksheet. And I'm going to explain the importance of this. Is one of the most important documents that we look at when we come out to do a review. And I'm going to explain why. But again, you have to list all your receipts and invoices on this form. You list all your food purchases, all your non-food purchases or CACFP related, and maybe possibly labor. It's only anything that was solely used for CACFP purposes that you charged off to CACFP. If it's in your non-reimbursable section, you don't include it on here. You're only showing us the money that you spent for CACFP. It can only be, again, allowable expenses. We do have a chart, or we do have on page 92 or 82, 80, 82. It's just a small list of things that do or do not count for CACFP. Again, it's if you use it for our program, then you can charge it off to our program. However, it also has to be in your budget and it has to be approved by our office. You can't charge it off if it's not in our budget. So let's just say that you wanted to do paper, because you bought paper to do you need paper to do your paperwork. You bought paper to send out the enrollment form, to send out all these documents. You send all that out. So you have paper, but you didn't list paper in your application and agreement. And you can put under supplies, that's fine. But I'm just giving you an example. But it has to be approved in there in order for you to charge it off. Labor is the big one that we do look at, just kind of FYI. If you do have anything that you use for the whole center, paper could be one of them. Another one is paper towels. Maybe you bought paper towels and you use them in the kitchen, and then you also use them in the bathroom. Well, you have to prorate it. If it was not used for CACFP, you can't charge it all off to CACFP. So what you can do is say you buy paper towels, you spend $10 a month on paper towels. I'm making stuff up. And so what you can do is like 1 month charge it off to CACFP and 1 month you don't, because you say you use 50% in the kitchen and 50% in the bathroom. Or what you can do is you pay your $10 for your paper towels every month and then mark it out and put $5, because you're saying that you only spend 50% of it on CACFP. But if you use it for CACFP, you can it's allowable expense and it can be on this expenditure worksheet. So this is an example of the expenditure worksheet. We do have this in interactive as well. You do have to have one per site. We have one that's in there that you can have by site. And then like right here at the top, they listed all their food and milk, listed all their receipts, because we have to have your receipts to validate it. So make sure you have them all there. They list all their food, how much they spent on food and milk. Then they have all the receipts that they did for their non-food purchases. And then down here, they are adding their labor. And this is only labor used for CACFP. So they have their cook and they have 2 teachers. And the reason why they have the cook and 2 teachers on here twice, talk to your program specialist about it, what may work best for you, for your center. But the reason it's listed on here twice is because they got paid twice that month. We have to pull pay stubs to look at labor. But yours may say, no, it's okay, you can do it all once, but maybe let us know the dates that you got paid, so when we pull the pay stubs. But what this form tells me right here is they're telling me that they spent $264 on admin cost, which is like doing the paperwork aspect. Food service labor is that helps serve the food, cook, all that kind of information. And they spent $1,900 for labor for that. How much they spent on food and milk is they spent $564 on food and milk, and then $41 are just supplies, maybe paper plates. And then this income is what it looks like they did here is the only time you'll put income on here if it's income to CACFP. So what it looks like they did here is they had a Halloween party and they invited the parents to come eat lunch, and you have to charge them. So this is not just any income that you get to your center. This is only income you get to CACFP. At the bottom, you add everything up except for the income, and you add it right here. on the net cost, number 14. Number 15, they received in reimbursement from us $856. And that means their operating balance is $1,181. The reason this form is so important is because when you're on CACFP, so we talked about being financially viable, that you as an organization have to be in the black in order to participate in the program. On the flip side of that, you also have to have what's called a nonprofit food service account. So what that means is the money that we give you for CACFP, you have to spend it all back into the program. You cannot make money on CACFP. So an example is if we give you $1,000 a month in reimbursement, you need at least to be spending at least $1,000 a month between food, labor, etc. Now, we do understand that some months, let's say we give you $1,000 in reimbursement, but you spend $800. You can carry over a small amount going forward. Like it's okay if you have a little amount that goes forward. But there may be some cases we come out and it is a little bit different. We're also going to go back to your previous months and add them all together to make sure, because you may have a large expense in one month. We were talking to some centers and they were telling us about how like you can't find styrofoam. So they went out and bought plastic reusable plates. Well, maybe she bought them all in October, but she's using them for CACFP. Put them on your expenditure worksheet. If it shows that you didn't spend enough money, we're going to go back and look at all your expenditures and add them all together and look at the average. We call it what's called a 3-month operating balance. Schools are very used to that term. They have it as well. So again, just to let you know that you have to spend all the money that you give us back into the program. And that's what this form does. This form shows us how much you're spending on CACFP. Okay. Now, again, you can add labor. You don't have to. Some people spend so much money on food and milk that they don't have to add any labor at all, which is fine. But if you do add labor, you can add operating labor, which is your cook, those that help serve, and then you have administrative labor. That labor must be approved in the budget. You cannot charge off more than what is approved. So if you're sitting here, and I'll give you an example, I have a couple examples, and these are all true life examples. You cannot charge off more than what's approved in the budget. So here's the thing. If you have a cook, a brand new cook, and you're starting her out at, say, $10 an hour, but she has chances to make raises up to $15 an hour, what I would do is in your budget, put that she's making $15 an hour, because you can charge off less than what you have to charge off what she's actually making. But that way you can work up. If she gets up to the $15, then you're not having to go back into your budget and redo it and make a change or update your budget. The other thing that you can't do is you can't charge off more than what's in the budget, but you can't charge off more than she's getting paid. So my example of this is, and this is a true story, I was at a daycare center and it was a nonprofit, and she charged off $1,000 for her cook, which is actually very reasonable for the month. Well, when I asked to see the pay stub indicated that she was mostly a volunteer and she got paid $200 a month. Well, if you pay someone $200 a month, you cannot charge off $1,000. If you are at your, and it happens when, especially when you're new, you may not be getting a paycheck right now. If you are not getting a paycheck, you cannot charge off your salary because you are not getting one. So just kind of a reminder with that. Also, if you pay labor with cash, Venmo, Cash App, we can't accept that because we have to see that taxes were paid. So just a little bit of information. And again, when we do look at finances for the review, I already talked to you about the reports that we look at, but we also will look at all bank and credit card statements of all accounts that you use to make CACFP purchases. So if you're like, this is my personal credit card, then you may want to get a credit card just for CACFP purchases. Not just that, but it will help a lot on taxes and stuff like that as well. Any labor payments, so we do have to look at the statements for labor payments if you charge off labor. And then any credit card or bank statement that when you put your CACFP funds into it, so that's your reimbursement, or if you transfer CACFP funds, we have to look at all accounts where any CACFP funds are. So I know, especially if you're new, Cassie's kind of talked about this, but if you have like a personal credit card and you don't want to see what you do on your personal credit card, then you get one just for CACFP. If you have a bank account and it's a personal bank account and you don't want to see what's going on in that bank account, then get a separate CACFP bank account. Okay, it will be helpful. Donated products. We cannot, if you have anybody that wants to donate food and milk, you can serve it, but it cannot be part of a reimbursable meal. So if someone says, hey, I have milk, I'll donate milk to you, you can serve it, but it cannot be milk that you would use for a reimbursable meal. It is an extra. So maybe you want to use that milk for cooking instead. If you have multiple centers, and I'm talking multiple centers as in, because we have several, that you're not multi-sided, that means one agreement number with different sites underneath it. What that means is you have multiple centers where you have, say, 4 daycares and they each have their own agreement number with us. It doesn't matter if you are multi-sided or have multiple centers. Everybody does have to have their own expenditure worksheet. Everybody has to have their own expenditure worksheet. But if you have multiple centers with their own agreement number, you cannot share receipts. Each center has to have their own receipts because you're choosing for that to be one single site center. So each center has to have their own receipts. Okay. Now, one question that we do get is like, what are some things that could cause an overclaim? What could cause us to take money back? And some of that is if we show up and you have no records. If you have any errors on your family size and income application, which it happens. So like I said, some of this, it's not big errors. You're going to have some errors. Everybody does. But we're just letting you know what could cause. So let's just say you approved somebody for free and they should have been reduced, or maybe you didn't sign the bottom of the applications, then those would go from free to not eligible. But usually if there's application errors, you're going to have a roster error, because usually when you approve it for free, you're going to put it on the free roster. If you claim more kids than you have in attendance, and I'm just telling you things that we see out there, if your meal counts are not properly maintained or there's incorrect numbers, and it can be for multiple reasons. Like sometimes if you're doing it electronically, you hit the 1-2 and you meant to hit the 1-5. Anything like that. If your records or documentation does not support the claim, because that's what we're doing. When we come out to do a review, we are validating that claim, making sure kids had everything that they're supposed to have. You're claiming the correct number of kids. If we find any food items that you indicate that you served on your menu of serve forms, but your receipts do not indicate that, or there's no inventory showing that. So, and a good example of that is milk. So let's just say that based on the number of kids that you had in attendance and how many breakfast and lunch that you claimed, you should have had 50 gallons of milk that you served. And then based on receipts that I only saw that you bought 10 gallons of milk and then you had 5 gallons of milk in inventory, you're short on milk. If you're short on milk, we take back every single meal that had milk in it for the month. So if you're short on milk, again, we're going to take back every breakfast, every lunch, and any snack where milk was served. If you share your receipts with another center, and I'm talking like we've seen it where literally they're not affiliated, but you have 2 friends, one's at center A and one's at center B, and they give each other their receipts to use during a review, which we have seen. If you claim adults, the only adults that are allowed to be claimed are those that are actually participants in adult daycare. And an adult daycare is a special daycare, which they're some of my favorite. It's for those that are disabled over the age of 21. I believe the age is 21. And then those that are over, I think, age 65. And then any of our for-profit centers, if you are a for-profit center and we come out to your center and you claimed, but we go out there and you do not have 25% of your kids are not free or reduced, or 25% of your kids don't swipe in, say you had 20%, then you can't claim. And if you claim, we have to take back all those meals, because you cannot claim unless a nonprofit can claim. But if you're a for-profit daycare, you are required to have at least 25% of your kids have free and reduced applications, or 25% of your kids enrolled swipe in for Title 20. Okay, let's talk about some other records. Now, again, just so you are aware, so we have records and we have forms in here, and we have forms in our resource library. And some of our forms in our resource library look exactly like the ones in the book, and sometimes they don't. But if you are using a form that is not in our book and it is not in our resource library, you need to have it approved by your specialist, your program specialist, before you start using it. Now, I will tell you, I have had a lot of centers that use their own forms, and a lot of your forms are way better than our forms. But we've had some issues that people did create their own form and it wasn't, and then we had to take back meals. So to be safe, all your forms that do not look like our forms need, and I understand we have some schools and we have some family daycare homes. So you may have like forms that you use for your family daycare home that you want to use, but like schools can definitely use it. Family daycare home, your stuff is usually not as detailed as we need it for the CACFP for this daycare side. So just reach out to your consultant and or your program specialist and talk to them about it and let them know what form you want to use. And if it's in another book, they'll probably accept it, except for family daycare home, they probably will not, but because it's not near as detailed as we need. But if you have a form, like I said, a lot of you are going to have forms that are way better than ours, but our forms are just geared to fit most people. Of course, it's not going to do all. We have what's called Building for the Future fact sheet. This form right here is for everybody except adult daycare. Adult daycare does not need to do this form. You do need to hand it out every year to your participants, but my big suggestion is it saves on paper, is because the application and agreement and the enrollment form is all on one page. You may want to put this on the back and print it out. Even though you're giving it to the parent, they're giving it back to you. It still shows that you gave it to them, but just make sure that your information is here at the bottom. So again, this is for every entity except for adult daycare on CACFP. It doesn't matter if you're at risk, family daycare home. It says right here, child care, family daycare home, and at risk and homeless shelters have to use this form. Adult daycares do not. They're the only ones. A WIC brochure, you do have to have a WIC brochure available. If you don't have any, you can contact WIC. We have that information in the office. I do know right now a program specialist gave it to me, but they have what's called an EWIC brochure. So you can go online and print out the EWIC brochure so that way you have some. Again, this is required for everybody except for our adult daycare centers. They don't need to have a WIC brochure available. Inventory. So starting this year, inventory is now required. It is required for food and milk. And it's really to protect you guys because we've had a lot of people that were not keeping inventory and we took back a lot of meals because of it. It's for all unopened items on hand at the end of the month. It is for both food and milk. It is to be completed each month. If you are an entity, if you have your own inventory that you have been doing, contact your specialist and just talk to them. Because I talked to some centers when we were doing some of these live trainings, and they're like, well, I've been doing perpetual inventory and I have to the way my kitchen's set up. Again, talk to your program specialist. If you have something you've already been doing that's already very successful for you, talk to them and they'll probably be fine with it. This is the example. It's front and back. It's 2 pages. It is in the interactive forms and it looks just like this, but we also have another one in interactive forms that you can use, and it has a tab, 1 tab for meat, 1 tab for vegetable, 1 tab for grain bread, but it lets you cost it out. We're not requiring that you cost, but if you do want to cost it out, we do have that available to you. But again, that you have to do this, again, the date that you do it, the person that does it, and I'll explain this more as well. And you may need more than 1 page, but it's front and back. Now, we have a meat alternate section, a grain bread, a fruit, a vegetable, and then on the back we have milk formula and we have infant food. And for some of my centers, I just did infant training last week. I'm going to just put the one for food and infant formula and infant food. I'll put one of those in the infant section, so that way if they want to keep track of that, they can for your teachers. It is up. We have it at the bottom. We have condiments or extra food and CACFP related. These are optional. It's not required. We're doing this again. Like I said, people have been short on food, and if they kept their inventory, we would not be taking meals back. So again, this is why we are now requiring it. Now, we have added some forms to this manual from last year, and those forms do include the inventory form for both. Meal count worksheet, again, is only for our daycare centers, and it's the two front and back that we did. We have the meal service change form, which I talked about earlier. It is now in here. We added the claim revision form to this book, and we added the review notification letter. And then something else that we did add is if it's a required form, we now request, and it's been at all of our interactive forms, so the forms in our worksheet section have all been updated with this as well, but it says a form completed by. Now, it does not have to be a signature. It just needs to be, it can be handwritten, it can be printed, it can be typed. But the reason this is in there is because we've had questions on forms and we didn't know who to talk to. That's the only reason we need it. We need to know if I have an issue with this form. So I'm looking at the meal count worksheet and I'm like, I got different numbers than you did. I need to go talk to the person who was in charge of that form. And that's why we want that information. So when we come out to do a review, and this is in the notification letter, so I just want to bring your attention to it, but like we talked a lot about what we look at during a review, but some extra things that we do ask to see are board minutes. If you're a nonprofit, we have to see that you're having program oversight, that you're talking about CACFP. We will look at food safety, which is your fridge and freezer temperatures. We need to see your proof of your previous year's records. You have to have your past 3 years records plus current year. Unless you're new, of course, you're not going to have them. Your Title 20 or Title 19, that's your swiping. That's Title 20 is for childcare. Title 19, that's for adult days. Any contracts or agreements if you outsource your food or services. So example, if you get your foods from a vendor, like every day they bring you food, like you have an agreement with a school district, we need to see the contract when we come out. And then for adult daycares, you also have to have an individual plan of care and a group plan, and we will ask to see that as well. So a claim, after 60 days, a claim cannot be paid. Payment notices should be kept on file. Any claim needing a revision, you have to fill out the claim revision form and send that in to us. And then we also have a monthly record keeping checklist. Again, that's also in this manual, and you can print that out. And it's just a checklist to make sure that you have all your monthly documentation available. I added a couple of things to it, just like things like your training that you need annually and your procurement that you need annually, which we're actually going to talk about next. Next, again, we're going to talk about training and civil rights. So it is required that someone at your center is your designated trainer. So like someone that comes to the training every year, this is usually what happens is someone comes to this training, then you go back and discuss it with your staff, because you have to have training every year for your staff. It is required. A trainer must conduct the annual training. You have to have the date that you did it, the agenda, the topics, and signatures. You need to keep in sign-in sheets. It's not required that all staff be trained on all topics. It's just only civil rights. If they're doing anything with CACFP, even help serving food, they have to have civil rights training. And then all of your trainings have to be completed by September 30th of every year. So that's what happens. A lot of times people will come to our training and then they'll train their staff. So like maybe you go to training in September, but you do your trainings in October. So if you do in October, you have from October 1st to September 30th every year to cover each of these topics. These are required topics that must be covered. Again, you can do it in conference style, you can do it meeting style, you can do it one-on-one. Again, you maybe you do the claims and you have a backup person that looks at the claims as well. So you may have someone that does the claims. So you may want to only talk to that person about the claim submissions and the claim review process. And again, just keep a sign-in sheet and the date that you talk to them about it. But civil rights does need to be done for really everybody that helps with CACFP at all, even teachers. If they're helping serve food, then they need it. But again, you can do even CACFP meal patterns is a really good one that you may want your staff, all of your staff to know about. But again, you can do it one-on-one meeting style. If you have a problem employee, I always tell them, like, say you have your cook, they're not getting it, and you've gone over meal patterns with them 4 times, make sure you document each time you talk to them about meal patterns, because what happens too is if you do need to let that person go, you have the documentation that you have gone over the material with them 4 times and they're still not understanding it. So it also is a protection for you. So state agency, that would be us. We do now state agencies. In the last couple of years, we started requiring training. Well, when do we require training? We require training for a new center coming on. We require training if we come out to do a review and you're what we call, again, seriously deficient, meaning you have over 25% errors. Then once your review is complete, you have 60 days to attend a training from your exit conference. And your exit conference is when they sit down with you to tell you what's all wrong and you sign the form that they went over everything with you. Now, if you do not attend training within 60 days, then you will be automatically terminated from the program. It is part of your corrective action. And then now what we started this year is any center wanting to renew their application and agreement, you have to attend training. So really now all centers are now required to attend training at some point every year. So just kind of a reminder, we have the training calendar that you can go to. It shows all of our live trainings. This training out there is on the training calendar. You do have to be registered when you register, that's what shows up into the business maintenance page. That's you. And again, just a reminder, your name on Zoom needs to match the name in the training calendar, because if your name is Bob Smith, and then that's what you registered as, and you registered in Zoom as Abby Rose, I'm not going to know that Abby Rose was Bob Smith. Like, I'm not going to know that. So please try to have the same names when you log in. And then OSDE, OK Edge, that is our self-paced trainings that you can do. Like, this training will be there. So if you do have someone that wants to do it more self-paced, once you finish the training, you will also get a certificate. We have additional trainings that are with USDA. Team Nutrition has a webinar the third Thursday of the month. The Institute of Child Nutrition has some self-paced trainings like we do. They also do some live trainings, I think, via Zoom. It is for any child nutrition program. It will cover they have any child nutrition, anything. Like they do a food buying guide training. Theirs is 6 hours, ours is 1. So some of the trainings we're trying to kind of piggyback off them. Then we also have what's cooking for kids. This is brand new. This is brand new as of last month. Cooking for Kids has been working on our school side since 2012. What this Cooking for Kids is they're going to help with recipes. They're going to help with like how to do standardized recipes. They're going to help with food safety, and they're going to have in-class, in-person trainings. And these are them right here. Cassie sent out a flyer. It came through our big, massive mail. This flyer is also located in the resource library under trainings and workshops. You can go here to register. You have to register to go. Again, it's in person, and you have to register because there's only limited availability. They'll go over like knife skills. We did it. We got to go when schools were doing it. It's really, really neat. And it's specialized for CACFP. So they're going to buy food and do recipes on items that you can purchase at a grocery store. Okay, so civil rights training, again, all staff needs to be trained on civil rights. You can go out to, we do one live training a year. It's usually around October 1st. If you don't make it to that training, then you have to do the one in OSDE Connect. And the instructions for that are in the resource library. Civil rights, you have to have a non-discrimination statement on any materials that you send out of your center. We have it on all of our USDA forms. But like the main thing that you would need it on is if you post your menus online or if you send your menus home with kids, then you need to have the non-discrimination statement on there. Every center must have an And Justice for All poster. It has to be in a visible location. I will show you a picture of one. If you are new, we will give you one when your specialist comes out. You have to have a procedures for filing any civil rights complaints. You do. It is in the manual, and it is also in the resource library. And if anybody does have a complaint, there are 6 items that they can complain against for USDA. It's race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability. So if they have a complaint, it has to be on civil rights in CACFP. They fill out that form and then they send it to USDA. Been on staff for 13 and a half years. I haven't seen one come through. So because if one gets sent to USDA, we have to go and investigate on it. This is the non-discrimination statement. It is in here as well. You can always pull up. So the manual in the resource library is PDF. So you can always go out there and like copy and paste stuff from there too. But the non-discrimination statement, this is the first half of it. This is the second half. Again, it is in the manual. It is under the civil rights. It's the first page in civil rights section. This is a copy of the And Justice for All. It needs to really be 17 by 11, and again, just in a visible location. So something else is civil rights. It is no longer allowed to report child's race by visual observation. Even for us, we're not allowed to do it anymore. We really would like the parent to self-report. And because kids, like with us, we only pick one, but a kid can be multiracial. So they can be multiple racials. So that's one thing that we did change. That's why it's not up quite yet, is when we changed the CACFP enrollment form in here that we did say Head Start, is we did add it. We have a CACFP enrollment form that does have racial information in it. So those, like our Head Starts, that way you can use it. If you have a form, you can add it to it as well. Again, it's not required for a parent to self-report, but that's the only way we know how to do it now, because USDA does not want us to do it visibly. But we are still waiting on guidance. And once we know something more, we will definitely move that on. I feel like I'm talking super fast, but we have a lot of information, and I just want to make sure I get you out of here by 11:30. So I hope it's not too, and plus hopefully it's kind of keeping you awake. So our next section is procurement. I will be doing a big procurement training the end of January. It will be, I think it's Thursday, the 27th of this month. I'm so confused on month. So I will be doing it, yes, at 1 p.m. It's a 2-hour training. It's really for big, large entities. It's mostly geared towards schools. So those that use a vendor, or those of you that are just larger and purchase more items, it's really geared for that. But I'm going to kind of talk to you about some procurement and what a lot of our small centers are doing for procurement purposes. Now, procurement is required for all federal funds. It's not just for CACFP. My mom works for Department of Transportation. She works at the FAA. They have to follow the same procurement rules the rest of us do. We have a little bit of some certain things that we have to do for CAC or for child nutrition, but for the most part, if you're receiving federal funds, we all have to be doing the same thing. What procurement is just making sure you're having full and open competition. They want to make sure that you're spending federal dollars appropriately. Everybody that does have federal dollars, you do have to have what's called written procedures, and we have a procurement plan prototype. It is located in the resource library. We have one in here as well. We have one out there what's called formal. So that's if you're spending more than $250,000, you need to have the formal one. Most of you are spending way less than that per year or per vendor, per store. So you can just use the CACFP procurement plan for small, or I think it says for small centers, or it just says for centers. Again, the small one is in here as well, but it is in the resource library under the procurement section. You can print it out and put your information on there, and there's a couple of questions throughout the document that you need to answer, but it's very painless, I promise. Our procurement plan follows USDA guidance. So it has to have methods of procurement, which I will talk about. It has to have a code of conduct. It has to have a minority firms, women's business, enterprise, and labor surplus statement, which ours does. It has to have a chart of procedures. Our chart of procedures are separate from the procurement plan, but go in here to how to fill it out. It's really easy. Or you can we can do a Zoom call. I can help you fill it out. It's super easy. What it is, it says like what it is, like, is it bread? Then it says, how often do you go out to look at prices? And then how do you procure it? Small purchase or micro purchasing, which I'm going to talk about here in just a moment. So most of you are going to do what we call informal method. It's micro purchasing and small purchase. Formal is if you spend over $250,000 per store or per vendor. And I'm not really going to talk about it. I will tell you what it is, but I tell you go to my other training, because we do the procurement training about once every 3 months. Now, micro purchasing, what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, yep, I spend less than that, so that's what I'm doing. And that's not the case. So I'm going to explain to you what micro purchasing is. So yeah, micro purchasing is per transaction you spend $10,000. That is correct. However, you have to be buying your child nutrition stuff, your CACFP stuff from multiple vendors. You have to what we call spread the wealth. You don't get quotes, you just buy, but the prices are reasonable. Example of this is, let's say you buy your food from Walmart. you buy your food from Sam's, you buy your paper from Staples, you buy supplies from Amazon, you buy your milk from Highland, you buy your fruits from a farmer's market. You're spending your money, you're spreading the wealth. You're spreading your money to all these people, and you don't necessarily buy, you don't necessarily check prices. That is micro purchasing. What most of you are doing is you're actually doing small purchase. So small purchase is you are required to do, if you spend over $250,000, that's when you're required to do formal. But if you're spending under that, a lot of you are doing small purchase. Small purchases is when you're actually checking prices. You can check prices by email. You can go to the store and check prices visually, by telephone, by catalogs, by websites. When you check prices, you have to check prices between two people, and you just need to document. Like, you don't have to go with the lowest price, but you have to tell us why you went with them. Now, we've run into a situation where a lot of people are like, well, I just buy my food at Walmart because I can do grocery pickup. Okay, well, that's not micro purchasing because you're only buying from one source. But what you can do is once a year, you need to do small purchase. So what you can do is you can go to Walmart and just look at prices, write a list of 10 items that you buy. Maybe it's milk, it's bread, it's canned vegetable, it's canned green beans, just list 10 things. Write Walmart. Then go to Crest or go to Reese's and write and compare prices. Write the price down for the exact same item. Then at the bottom of that, just state like, yeah, prices at Crest are overall cheaper, but I shop at Walmart because I can do grocery pickup and it's saving me time on labor, and I always have access. I had one lady that solely did grocery pickup because she was always losing her receipts. So that way she didn't lose her receipts. So give us an explanation why. If they don't have to be the lowest, but you have to tell us if you're only buying from one or two people, you have to tell us why you're buying from them. Multiple is 3 or more. So yes, it doesn't matter if you only have one source, then you need to tell us why you buy from them. You have to tell us. You have to check prices. So what you can do is if you live in a town that only has like Walmart, what you can do is find a neighboring town, which I know it's going to be more expensive, or even like I'm from a small town. And I'm from a very small town, and the town neighboring to us does have a Walmart and they have a United. United prices are going to be high anyway, but just tell us why you're buying from them and explaining. So, but you still have to check the prices. Or if you use a vendor, you have to check prices. Because the thing is, if you go to Walmart, you can just go and look at somebody else. But if you use a vendor, you can't just, you have to ask them for their prices. So if you use a vendor, then you need to check prices. Now, one thing that you can do is say you use a vendor and like Cisco, Benny Keith, US Foods, Tankersley, but you have an emergency purchase. Like you use a vendor, you use Tankersley. They supply all your food, but on the ship that day, on the truck that day, they didn't have hot dog buns and you're having hot dogs for lunch. So you just go to Walmart and buy them. That's different. That is a micro purchasing, because a micro purchasing, that's kind of an emergency purchase. You are already buying from somebody and that's just an emergency. So I'm glad I remembered all that, because that is going to apply to a lot of you as well, that you may have an emergency purchase, and that is considered more of a micro purchasing because you're not checking prices. You already checked prices here, but it's just when we consider it an emergency purchase, we consider that falling under micro purchasing. Now I just made this little sheet just to give you so you can go back and reference the difference between micro purchasing and small purchase, what the differences are. Formal, again, is required over $250,000. If you spend under $250,000, I would not suggest for schools, for anybody, do not do formal. It's a pain. There's a lot of steps to it. You have to have an advertisement in the paper. You have to have a bid opening. There's a lot of steps to it, and a lot of people miss those steps. So what it is sealed bid or request for proposal and RFP. Sealed bid is based solely on price. RFP is more like services. Price has to be the main factor, but that's not the only reason why you choose them. So I have another quick question, another little poll I want to ask to see if I need to cover it. And this is on contract mills. Does anybody in here do contract meals? And when I talk about contract meals, I'm not talking about meals like you have a food service management company as a school. I'm talking about like, does every day, like you have a contract with the school district and every day they bring you food and you like serve it out, or a vendor, okay? You have someone with a vendor that every day that they bring you food and you serve it out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go over this. If I have one, then I go over. I just have to make sure I'm going over all the topics I need to. But one thing is for sure is on services. You can contract out for services, but the institution has final administrative and financial responsibility. Nobody can contract out the management functions of CACFP, NSLP, any child nutrition. You cannot contract the management functions, meaning like, it just means like you have still the school or the daycare has to have final control over everything. Services that can be contracted. If you contract out for services, you have to write a contract, send it to our office before you can go out on bid. And this is for services, not for food. And then we have to have a copy of that contract every year. The other thing is contracting for food service. This is when you contract for food. Again, it is required that you have to have an agreement to furnish food either with a school or a tech center, or you have to have an agreement to furnish food other than a school. And that's like with a vendor. And we have those forms in the resource library and in the, they're in the manual. No, they're not in the manual. I take that back. They're not in the manual. They're only in the resource library. But you have to get a copy of that contract every single year. Now I'm kind of just go through the highlights of who's responsible for what. So if you contract with the school district, they are responsible for keeping production records, meaning every day, like if they give you spaghetti and noodles and bread, they have to list it on their production records. But what happens is when you contract, you have agreement with them and every day they bring you food. Well, when they deliver you food, they have to give you a contract meal delivery receipt form. We call it a CMDR, and it's also in the manual as well. And I'll show you a copy of what it looks like. But you have to have a copy of that. That is your menu of serve form. That is you showing us what they served. So when they give you that form, you keep those forms. And then that's, again, what you use as your menu of serve form. So when we come out, we ask to see those forms to make sure that you were serving reimbursable meals. At the end of the month, that school or vendor is going to bill you for those meals that they gave you. And then after you're billed, then every month you claim reimbursement with us. That's how it works. Now, something I have to point out is, and this happens, especially I see with those that do with the school district, when you reimburse meal, when you claim for reimbursement with us, it is based on the number, it's based on the meal count when that child eats that meal. It is not based on how many meals that they delivered. So an example of this is, I see this quite a bit, is I had a center that was licensed for 25. So every morning for breakfast, they would bring 25 breakfasts and then tell the center by 9 a.m., call us and tell me how many kids you have in care, and then we'll deliver that for lunch. Well, so you're licensed for 25 and they bring you 25 meals, but you only have 18 kids that actually consumed a meal. You can only claim 18 meals. You can only claim meals that kids consumed it. They're going to bill you for 25 meals because that's how many they gave you, but you cannot claim for 25 meals because you did not have 25 meals in kids in care. You only fed 18. It's a point of service is when you count that meal. So just so people are aware, and this is the menu of serve form. If you don't keep these, then we're going to take back all your meals because this is what you're showing us that you fed them. So if, say, you lost a week, then we're going to take back that week of meals that you claimed with us because you can't show us that you fed them a reimbursable meal. Now, remember, they need to sign it, the people that send it to you, but you also need to sign it. You need to make sure that they're giving you enough food. It's also your responsibility. Now, I will tell you, it does state in the contract that if they don't serve enough, then you don't have to pay them. But I'm just telling you, it is part of your responsibility to kind of look at that. Now, if you do contract with the public school, just again, so you are aware, public schools are required to charge you a certain amount. They don't have a choice. Now, a vendor, it can be more lenient, but a school is required, if they have a contract for meals, a school is required to charge you the free rate for lunch, the free rate plus the value of commodities plus the incentive, and there's required to charge you the free rate at snack. It is a USDA rule. A school will get written up if they don't do this. So I just want you to be aware, if you contract with the school district, they're charging you what they're charging you because they're required to. If you have a contract with the school district, that contract is good from July 1 to June 30th. We're doing it on the school's fiscal year, not your fiscal year, or not the CACFP fiscal year, which is October 1st to September 30th. So just if you got one next year, try to get it in June to the school to have it signed, because we're going to start doing it by the school fiscal year. Okay, next little poll question. How many people do it? Oops, I stop sharing. Okay, how many people do I have in here that have infants at their center? Okay. As long as I get at least one yes, I will talk about it. So I'm going to go over infants very little. I mean, I have some slides on it. I have about 5, I think, slides on infants. I do an infant meal training. It's much more in depth. It's about an hour training. If I have a lot of people on there, it goes about an hour and a half, but it's really about an hour training. It gives a lot more information than I'm going to give you right here. But I do just, again, want to give information about infants. And we kind of do the infant training. Next month, it will be in the morning, but I try to do it also for your teachers, because a lot of times it's your teachers that have everything to do with the infants. So that's why I give you the director the overview, but you may want your teachers to attend the infant training. So if you're on CACFP and you have infants, you are required to have the infants have to have access to these meals. If a parent does not want to participate, which it can happen, or if, like, say, they're being very demanding in the fact that they want their kid to only have organic food, or they want their child to have everything homemade, you may have the parent bring everything and just do the infant meal waiver form, and that way the parent can bring stuff, but you just don't claim the meal because the parent is bringing everything. As a center, you are required to have at least one type of iron fortified infant formula, and it does have to be FDA approved. You pick whatever you want to have, but you do have to have something on hand. Infants are from birth to 1 year of age. A parent can bring one component of the reimbursable meal. It has to be an allowed. A lot of times you're going to see them bring either breast milk or infant formula, but it is allowable. It's actually for the whole center. A parent can bring one reimbursable component. It has to be allowed. So if they want to bring like oat milk doesn't count on our program. It won't count. But if they want to bring like regular milk, they can. But it would just go to their child. It's not a donation. It just goes to their child. Infants are also what we call feed on demand. They do not have to go by the times that are listed in your application and agreement, because they are an infant, so they can eat whenever they want to. So if you give an infant like a bottle 3 times a day, you can, and they get the amount they're supposed to, then you can claim the meal 3 times, essentially is how it works if they're during your care. Now, infant meals, infants can be breastfed on site and you can claim the meal. Vegetables and fruits must be served at snack once the kids are developmentally ready. Juice is not allowed for infants unless you have a doctor's note. Yogurt and eggs can count now, they used to not. And then you can do any like ready to eat cereal, which is like puffs or Cheerios, bread, or crackers, that can be served at snack only. The other meals can have infant cereal, but you can serve at snack, you can serve them other grain items. We have 2 age groups. We have birth to 5 months and from 6 months through 11 months. And again, both of them require iron fortified formula, breast milk, or a combination of both. You cannot serve milk to an infant. It is not allowable. Now, one thing I do want to kind of point out is in the handouts, I gave you the flyer for cooking for kids. I gave you the infant meal patterns, the infant info handout sheet, which I'm actually going to show you here in just a moment. And then I also gave you the inventory example and a blank. So, and then the training calendar, information, so how to sign up the training calendar, and then also the changes from last year to this year. So let me pull this up. I just I'm pulling up the wrong thing. There it is. Okay. Where did it go? There we go. So it was something that I'm going to draw your attention to. I won't go over it a whole lot, but it's just something I want to draw your attention to. So from birth through 5 months, they're only required to have breast milk or formula from 4 to 6 fluid ounces. But once they get through 6 to 11 months old, they again have to have formula. They can be up to 6 to 8 fluid ounces. At snack, it's only 2 to 4 ounces. And then they have to have foods from all components once they are developmentally ready to have that. And the serving sizes are like 0 to 4 ounces and 0 to 2 tablespoons. But once they are eating it, you do have to start giving them that food. Infant cereal and grain, as I mentioned before, you can do breads and crackers at snack only. There are sugar requirements for infants, which is for all the whole center. When it comes to cereal, it must be whole grain or enriched, and then you cannot have a grain-based dessert, which again, nobody at the center can have a grain-based dessert. And again, infant cereal is required at breakfast or lunch before any other grain item can be served. If you have some issues with your parents not doing infant cereal, reach out to your program specialist or here in the office and we can talk more about that. The one thing I did want to draw your attention to is on this flyer, just kind of an FYI. Let's see, where did it go? Here it is. So this flyer that I gave you, it comes out of a Q&A. It comes out of questions out of the manual. And then also there's feeding infant meals that we will give you if you haven't gotten it. And we did send it to you if you've been on the program. But just so you're aware that if an infant is developmentally ready to accept solid foods before 6 months of age, do you serve them? And the answer is yes. And you write it down. You have to tell us how much that you're giving them, and it has to be on the menu of serve forms. So you can claim it, but once they are eating, you need to start writing it down. What if, like me, I'm a monitor, or maybe you're monitoring some sites and you go and you have an 8-month-old and they're not eating any solid food? What do you do? And it just says that the monitor should talk to the center or the daycare home and ask questions. I have been to centers where the 8-month-old, the parent says we don't want to feed them any solids until 1. I've been there when they're so premature that they're not developmentally ready at 8 months of age. It's just, we have to ask questions because they just don't want it to where the child is eating and you're just not writing it down. You have to write it down. And then in that feeding infants form book, which looks like this, again, we gave you a copy, or it's also in the resource library in the infant section. Can I serve babies in my care a pancake, fruit, and formula at breakfast or lunch and claim it as a meal? And it says no. The only grain that it is allowed is iron fortified cereal. So just give them a couple bites of infant cereal and then you can give them the pancake. But you can't just give them the pancake. You can give it to them just at snack, but you cannot give it to them as the reimbursable meal at breakfast or lunch. So oops. All those. Wow. Of course. Okay, hold on. Let me just cancel. Sorry. Something else I'm working on. Okay, so now let's talk just a little bit about food related, just so you are aware. We just want to point it out to you again, so you don't have to necessarily go to the meal patterns if you don't need to, but we just want people to be aware. So food service, I understand right now family style is not allowed. If you want to do family style, I highly suggest you ask your health department first. So if you pre-plate or serve it straight, just so you know, because we've had some Head Starts that always were supposed to do family style, but they stopped it because of COVID. But when you pre-plate, if a teacher is putting all the food on the plate for the child when you're serving it out, all the components in the minimum quantity required has to be on that plate when you serve it out. Family style is different. Family style is you have bowls on the table and then everybody's requirements are in the bowl. And then the adults, like the adult participants, like adult daycares, and then the children, they serve themselves. Now, it's not required that they put the entire amount on their plate. It is for Head Starts, but like if you have a daycare center and you do family style, a child, like if you have peas and kids like, I don't want peas, they really don't have to take it. We're not allowing you to force it. I know Head Start does, but as long as their amount is in the bowl, it doesn't have to be on their plate. So, but again, because they have to serve themselves, if you're Head Start was supposed to start back doing it, but when I talked to Head Start a couple of months ago, they nixed it again. They said no, and then talked to the health department. We don't want you doing it if the health department is telling you do not do it at this time, because all the kids are touching every single spoon. So we understand. But some food related issues is, and I'm going to do another poll while I talk to you about this. The other poll that I have is, I just need to know who on here has multiple sites. If you're multi-sited, let's see here, contract news. And to know, again, it's just to know what I need to go. If you have multiple eating sites under your one agreement, that's what I need to know. So you cannot, you have to serve a whole grain at least once per day. You cannot serve juice more than once per day. If you serve a lunch meat that doesn't meet requirements, that's a big one. If you serve any grain-based desserts, if you don't serve enough food, that's an issue. Serving a food item not found in the food buying guide that does not have a CN label or a product formulation statement. And I do a food buying guide training once every other month, and it's going to be in February, the first week of February. If you do not have labels for your grain-rich foods, yogurt, cereal, or deli meat, if the quantities or components are not listed on the menu to serve form, or if you do not have any contract meal delivery receipts. And I do have some that are on here that are multi-sided. So we're going to quickly go over that. It's like literally 2 slides. So I just wanted to kind of, again, see who my audience is, because I don't talk about it if you're not on here. But if you do have multiple sites, you are required to monitor each site at least 3 times per year. We have a method called, the most common method is doing 2 unannounced and 1 announced. You can do them all unannounced if you would like. That's fine, but just each site has to be reviewed 3 times per year. An expenditure worksheet, you have to have 1 for each site, because when we do a review for multi-sited, we do a percentage. So if you have an expenditure for the whole center, for all of them all combined, we would have to do everybody combined for review. So if you have 2 centers, we will only review 1. So that's why you do it per site. If you are multi-sited, you are allowed to charge off administrative labor, but you are only allowed to charge off up to 15%, and it's of your total reimbursement of the year. So you put your projected reimbursement in the application and agreement, and that's where this information's at. And I also have a 1-hour multi-sided training that will also, I think, be the beginning of February. I just did it last week, so you may want to come to that training as well. And then the building for the future, you have to submit one to our office. I don't know why we have to have it for multi-sided, but we do have to have a copy of that. If you do want to add a site, we have an add site form in here. We also have the add site form in the resource library. We also have instructions. So there are certain things you have to give us along with these forms. We have an add site for at risk, and we have add for new CACFP site. So just make sure you give us the correct one with all the supporting documentation. Something that is also new this year, in order to approve your multi-sided application, is we have to have policies and procedures. And these are your policies and procedures. We have to have, you can give us your sponsoring organization policies. If you have a policy handbook, you can just send us that. We have to have site policies. So like maybe in your site policy, it says like you give your CACFP paperwork to the main office by the 5th of the month, or anything like that. You also have to have seriously deficient procedures. So if you do a monitoring review on your site and they are considered seriously deficient, they have to have procedures and they can appeal it. So that you have to have that. And then we have to have job descriptions, at least for your director, monitor, and cook. Now, in the resource library, we have all of these in there. We have examples, and like, especially with the seriously deficient and the appeal procedures, you could adopt ours, but just go in it and read it. And then it's in Word, it's under the multi-sided section. But read it. It's also in this book, but you need to change it out to fit your organization. So just make sure that you do that. But you can adopt a lot of our policies. But again, just skim through the document and be like, nope, we don't do that. Yep, we do this. You can just delete it if you don't do it, or add any other statements that you need to. So we are at the end of our presentation for today. Thank you guys so much. I'm so sorry. I felt like I talked so fast. This training is a lot longer than it has been in the past, but we have just so much information. A lot of it is based on either new, or a lot of it is based off of issues that we've seen in the field. So we just want to make sure everything gets handled. And plus I want time for question and answering. We do have our blanks, our originals. It says the page numbers in here. They're also in the resource library. So I'm going to stick around for a while if you guys have any questions, because I know I talked really fast. I hope it wasn't too fast, but I just wanted to make sure I went through the information as much as I just wanted to get through the whole thing. So thank you guys.